What's going on? Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, so good to have you back for season 4 of the AFC podcast. Today I have two very special guests with me. I have Dani Martineck, and they are a filmmaker here in New York City, and we rendezvoused and met for the very first time at the Triborough Film Festival Season 2, along with the director of said movie, Molly Karna, two Astor Award winning awards, I should say. It was The Rushing of the Sea or The Rushing by the Sea?
Oh, The Rushing of the Sea. Yeah, you got it.
The Rushing of the Sea. All right, so I guess Molly, why don't you and I kick it off?
Sure.
So what was your contribution to The Rushing of the Sea?
Yeah, so basically Danny and Isabella had this idea for a film that that Danny and Isabella were producing together, and Danny had written, and it came from a personal place in Danny's life, and they reached out to me to potentially direct this short film. And once I heard the brief about it, it's a meditation on grief, so it's kind of a sensory a person's sensory experience of grief the first time that they're left alone after their mother's death. So when they told me about the story the first time, I thought it was really interesting, but especially once I read the script and understood that it's not the most conventional narrative. There's a lot of surreal aspects to it. Like I said, it's really sensory, so the grief is experienced through vision, the characters' visions, and their auditory experiences. And so once I understood that this is more unconventional than something I would normally work on, I was very hooked on it, and I jumped on board.
Oh, wow. Well, Dani, I guess you wanna add anything to that? This was more of a personal story about you.
Yeah, it was kind of A to seed from my own life. And I'll preface this by saying my mother has given her continuing permission for me to tell this story, so no worries on that front. But I have a younger sister in real life, so older and younger in the film are sort of loose avatars for the two of us. And my mother, I found out as an adult that my mother has been HIV positive since before we were born, but she didn't find out until we were young. Basically, I was a very young kid and my sister was in her arms at the doctor's office like a baby. And so it recontextualized a bunch of stuff about our childhood, realizing that she spent so much time and energy making sure that if she suddenly weren't there, we would be okay. And so the film just kind of poured out of me as both a little bit of anticipatory grief and dealing with that idea of, oh, she could have been gone at any moment, and she still could be if something goes wrong with the drugs or something happens, but also an elegy for her while she's still here to see it.
So your mother's still with us.
Yeah, she is still with us. She's doing really well, all things considered. And she actually got to see The Rushing of the Sea on the big screen because my family, my mom and my dad and my sister are down in Knoxville, Tennessee. And we had a screening at Southern Oasis Film Festival in Sevierville. So they got to see it.
Oh, so your movie is not just New York City, it's going around the country a little bit.
We screened a couple other places. We did have a lot of our team is also LA based. Isabella and I, and a lot of the production crew were New York based because we shot it here. But Molly is LA based now. And so a lot of our post crew is LA based. And we also screened in Culver City. So.
Where's that? That's Tennessee?
It's in LA.
Yeah, West LA. Culver City.
Oh, Clover, like four leaf?
No, Culver.
Culver.
Yeah. It's just like a neighborhood in LA.
I've never even heard of Culver.
I hadn't heard of it before either.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard of it before either. I'm very, very ill California traveled.
Yeah. All righty. So, all right. So this was quite a collaborative effort where you guys assembled from across the nation. And Molly, are you originally from Los Angeles?
No, I'm from the East Coast, and I lived in New York for a while, which is how I was connected with Isabella, our other producer, in the first place because she had acted in the very first short film that I ever made. So I lived in New York for like 6 years or so, and then I moved to LA in 2021, January 2021, in like the middle of the pandemic.
Oh, geez. No, I get it. Everybody else was moving around trying to figure out what's the next step. That was still a rough time, and we even actually call that
Yeah.
time the time of the pandemic. It's like we all have this unwritten that we know exactly what everybody's talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. It was wild.
So, well, what school was that you actually met Isabella from?
Well, I was taking a class at the New York Film Academy, and so I was taking an evening class that I was making a short film through. And I think I found Isabella on a casting website, maybe Backstage or something like that.
I think, yeah, I would probably guess it would be Backstage because I did my first anything with New York Film Academy through Backstage. But back then, it was a
Yeah.
legitimate newspaper before they converted it into a tiny little magazine, and way before it ever became a payroll system online.
Wow.
Yeah, that was back, I think, in what, 2010 going into 2011?
Wow. Nice.
Yeah, a legit newspaper, if you could believe it or not. So, alrighty, so you and Isabella, who unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, she couldn't actually make the show, but we're going to circle back with Isabella at another time. Uh, she's definitely going to listen to this, and I'm sure she's going to want to clear a lot of things up at the end of this conversation or contribute. So why don't you actually walk me through on, well, you know what I want to do is give Isabella just a little bit of a shout out here because she won Best Actress at the Triborough Film Festival this past season. And what was that like for you guys? Were you surprised that she won, or what was your feeling about that?
Well, no, I think Isabella is the only one who is surprised. It's very charming to watch her win an award and just be completely shocked. And when we're all here, like, yes, 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 it's going to happen. It must happen. Yeah.
Yeah, not surprising. She's very, very talented, and yeah, it was definitely belonged to you.
I mean, like, from an actor's perspective, and now being on kind of like on this side in the industry, where I could just kind of sit back and just watch everybody's work on how well it was orchestrated, the timing, the cadence, the performance, all those tiny friggin' nuances that you see that an actor may or may not know. Like I'm picking up on it, and I gotta say it was so close on her just getting ahead just a little bit. And I think it was because of the film style that put her into just a little bit more of a performance category advantage because she didn't even need dialogue to tell this story. And that right there is what acting actually is, in my opinion. Actually, no, that's a matter of fact. I don't care what anybody says. That's the part.
Yeah, I honestly I forget how little dialogue there is in the film until I watch it, and I'm like, oh wow, there's like maybe like two or three lines in there, but a lot of it is just like I mentioned earlier, just the sensory experience that the character is going through. Like a lot of it, a lot of the story, aside from the acting, of course, a lot of the story is communicated through the sound design, which
Yeah.
we were also thrilled and not surprised to win a couple of awards.
Mm-hmm.
Our really talented sound designer Chantal worked really hard on layering all of the sounds of the ocean and different water sounds. We were listening to water sounds for like days, happy water, like angry water. There's a lot of water sounds out there. But yeah, it was really it's cool to watch it now on screen at these festivals like yours and other festivals, just having the distance from making it and spending so much time making it and then being able to see it on the big screen. And you forget so many things about the things that you make until you're experiencing it with the audience again.
Mm-hmm.
Want to add to that, Danny?
I was trying to think of something to add, but Molly, you expressed it so beautifully. There is something about, and it starts with the writing, but it's all aspects of the film that just the story moves without words, especially because so much of it is about Younger's, who's Isabella's character, her interiority, her experience of grief, and just we're right there with her, kind of submerged in it with her. So there's no words between us. We just are there.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, like it took me a second when I was watching it to really sort of understand and establish the relationship between the older and the younger, and I had to watch it
Hmm.
2 or 3 times to really just like because that's what I do. I watch everything like 2 or 3, 5, 7, 12 times. Um, so you wrote the script.
I did, yes.
So what was it I guess that made you want to like go more into about sort of like the emotional approach and have it performance based instead of like story driven and dialogue?
I think this story was always that way. It's kind of how a story just kind of tells you what it is.
Hmm.
It shows you what it is. It always emerged in this kind of way. I think when I was writing it, I was actually away from home. I was on a friend's couch in DC. Molly, I think you were already gone from that area, but
Mm.
it was I was thinking about death a lot because I think an uncle of mine was dying. An uncle of my husband's had just passed. And I was just kind of, I think, resting my ear on my hand, and it was cupped a little bit. So it did kind of that conch shell thing where I could hear the wind in the way that it kind of sounds like the sea or
Yeah.
feels like the sea. So I started to think about these images, and it all kind of coalesced into this like poetic ramble that if you look at it on the page, it's like a short story. It's just like description, 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 action line, very little dialogue. It's just blocks of text describing what's happening. So extreme kudos to Molly for coming in and doing the fine sculpting with me and getting the script to a place where the shooting script made sense to you, and our wonderful DP Austin Smoke and everybody else involved in translating what my brain put on the page into what everybody else could experience.
Yeah, it was a fun process because the first draft that I read was very much like read like poetic literature, almost like
Yeah.
there's a lot of, a lot of, like you said, description and honestly a lot of interiority that's described in the script. And so when I came on as director, I helped Danny we worked together to shape the script into a way where we could translate the interiority that's written in a more literary way into how we can experience that as viewers.
Mm-hmm. And then we have that interiority left in the script, little hints of it, to help inform acting choices, which I love as an actor. I'm like, oh, I know what's going on in their head. Okay, cool. But it's not a note for the camera or for the director.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The audience pick up on that because I didn't see too many other options. I was just really just taken in by sort of like honestly the flow of it flowed like water.
Thanks.
Yeah. Amazing. Yes. Good job, Molly and everyone.
Now
Good job to us.
that
Yeah.
begs the real question. Now, how long exactly was the script, and how many scenes did you have written down? I feel like this is only a 2 page script.
Mm.
Well, it started out close to 5 pages. And then once Molly and I got in rewrites and started shaping, it ended up closer to 10. I think it was 9 or 10. So it's still, even though it's not following the typical page kind of layout that you see when you think about, oh, a film script, a minute per page, it's still mapped pretty close.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, because the film's it's 10 minutes long and 30 seconds of credits.
Yeah.
All right, so now I'm curious a little bit about that because there's always a bit of an architecture to writing a script, and
Hmm.
was was there anything you learned about the final script after collaborating that you knew in your head from the first couple of pages, but was there a specific reason like why you had to actually document it onto the page? Does that help the director, the team? What's the point of being a writer like that?
I think for me, a lot of the process was actually more a winnowing away than a putting stuff in, because it started out just like a lush brain dump. A lot of that is not helpful. So then we got in and did the fine sculpting, and as Molly came in and helped me shape the story, the kind of initial idea that I had would have been very difficult to translate to screen, because initially the idea was that anytime anyone speaks to younger, she cannot understand the words. That's when she hears the sea. All she hears is the rushing of the sea.
Okay.
But through rewrites, we were like, okay, we need it to be a bit more present in other moments. We need to kind of soften this conceit a little bit, because that can still happen, but we do need to hear some words to kind of understand the relationships and what's happening. And if that is such a specific thing, and it was only happening in specific moments, there was something about it that wouldn't have landed the way we wanted to. So then we kind of opened up that idea and softened its edges a little bit, and it became what it is, which is just this huge immersion. She cannot escape right now. She's kind of drowning, and she has to figure out how to resurface.
Was there anything you wanted to add to
Yeah,
that?
thanks for recapping that, Danny. I honestly, I don't really remember the script shaping process, because my memories kind of start when we first met in New York in
Mm-hmm.
the apartment that we ended up shooting in. I have vague memories of like working over Zoom to shape the script a little, but I really don't remember what that first draft was like. I remember it being really poetic and kind of like dense with interiority and dense with like ideas and kind of like feelings, and then working on that to translate that into something that as a viewer will see and hear. But yeah, I now that you're saying all that, it's bringing it back.
Like, oh yeah. And this is why collaboration is magic, because if I left to my own devices, I'll go the weird poetic route, or it's basically it might surprise no one that I'm starting to work on a novel and things like that. But
Right.
that's like Molly, who's been doing so much more work in film and doing this kind of thing. This just what we were all able to pull together and create together, and just go, here it is. I love it. That's alchemy. That's magic.
Yeah, it really is such a collaborative effort. Like I as the director, you know, I was certainly leading the ship at times, but otherwise like everyone has played a really, really important role in shaping how the story is read at the very end as an audience. You know, they say, film is written three times: when it's written, when it's directed, and then when it's edited. And for us, that was also like when it was shot, and like in the way it was shot, and also in the way and in the sound design of it. Like we really, there was so much authorship from all our collaborators.
Yeah, and the tone you set, especially in post, with welcoming that collaborative authorship, because as you said, steering the ship, but then kind of be like, well, no, give me your ideas. What do you think? Okay, I like that. Or no, let's try this. Like it's a mindset that just watching you lead set and being able to kind of foster this environment is what made the film. So I just wanted to also congratulate you and say that's awesome.
Thanks.
Well, okay. Yeah. Like on that note, Molly, how many films have you made?
I've made 4 short films now, and I've made I was in grad school, so I've made a bunch of smaller projects that are also short films, but they're kind of like less in my arsenal, as I think of them more as exercises than the other 4 that I've made as short films.
Molly, can you talk about Truck Stop a little bit, because I love that film, and
Yeah, guys, jump in and actually carry the conversation. You guys have such a great relationship. It's my first time
Yeah, of course.
really doing a deep dive with you guys. I got like a little bit of IMDb to kind of get an idea of your background and stuff.
Yeah.
Please, like, don't hesitate to ask questions, especially to me.
Cool. Yeah,
Truck
so
Stop.
Truck Stop is the most recent film. Yeah, and it was also the thesis film that I made in grad school while at USC. So essentially it's about it's like a 15-minute short, and it's about a young Punjabi immigrant woman working at a desert truck stop in California. And she essentially it's her decision of whether she wants to stay or leave. So she finally is fed up with living in isolation, living in this remote place. She works alongside of her aunt, also who's an immigrant, at this truck stop. And when she finally feels like she's had it, she makes plans to leave and move to New York, where she thinks she'll have more community or more fun, just anything more than the remote desert truck stop that she's at. And so ultimately, she has to decide whether or not she wants to go or stay.
And that takes place in
But yeah, it was in California. So if you're driving between Los Angeles and Las Vegas, there's a place in the middle called Barstow. And just around Barstow, there's all these like small towns that are kind of rural, somewhat remote, and small populations, and it's all along the highway too. So along these highways, all along the American highways, just any place that's kind of remote and is a place where a truck would go by. There's all these truck stops that are specifically catering to Punjabi truck drivers, Indian Punjabi truck drivers, and that serve Punjabi food for these truck drivers.
okay.
So I had no, it kind of came out of me stopping at a couple of these truck stops. The first one I stopped at, I thought it was a fluke. And I was like, why is there Indian food at this gas station? And then I like didn't think about it. And then the second time I was like, oh, this is the second one. This is a pattern. So that's when I like kicked off researching, why do these even exist? That's how I learned that there's all these truckers that are Punjabi people, and then all of these truck stops have consequently popped up to serve this population of truck drivers. And because it's such a niche world that I wasn't aware of, and when I started talking to family friends or other people in the South Asian community and mentioning this to them, a lot of people are not aware of this. You kind of have to be in the world either as a trucker or a relative of a trucker or someone that travels a lot and has stopped at one of these highways or highway truck stops to really know that they exist and that they're quite common. So the fact that this world is ubiquitous but so kind of niche and shielded from the outside made me really curious and interested. And so I ultimately found one that was in the desert between here in Vegas and near Barstow. And the first time I stepped inside of that truck stop, I was like, oh, I know I want to shoot here. It was like super remote, like all around is desert and mountains. The employees live kind of on site because there's nowhere else really, like there, it's a small town. So often to get employees who are willing to stay there, employers will house them as well. And you step inside and mostly everyone in there is a Punjabi truck driver speaking Punjabi. The people working behind the counter in the kitchen are all Punjabi aunties and uncles that are cooking Indian food. And you just feel like you've stepped into like a whole different world. And the contrast between that and the surrounding town, which might be, like who knows what the demographics are of the town, but just in stark contrast to what's inside. And it just made me really curious, especially given kind of the climate we're in America right now, where it does feel like you can I shouldn't be so surprised that you can step into somewhere and feel like you're in a completely different world than where you're from. It seems like that's kind of politically like we're in this space now where things are so divided that you can kind of go back and forth. And I also like remember reading there was a review for one of these truck stops that actually kickstarted my interest in this world, because a lot of my previous assumptions about truck drivers, now I actually know better, but my previous assumptions about truck drivers were that they were like tough white guys with tattoos, and that they are maybe not as interested in engaging with other cultures outside of their culture, and there was like an element of danger to that, and that kind of was, and so that was also what made me really curious about the fact that there's a world that's catering to these Punjabi truck drivers. And there was, I remember reading a review for one of these truck stops on like a trucking app, and you can kind of, I think it's like meant for truckers to let each other know where where there are clean bathrooms to stop at, where there's good food to eat. And one of the reviews for an Indian truck stop I had been at was like, typical gypsy smell, typical gypsy attitude, like, high prices, like blah blah. And it was just like some of the most explicit racism I had read in a while or experienced in a while. And I was like unsurprised to find it, but at the same time surprised that it was there and so blatant. And so it made me really curious about all of that. Is to say, it made me really curious about the people who are working at these truck stops in these remote American places, and they're, brown Indian people who are living there, who have this connection with people in their own community, but that connection is very transient because it's truckers who are coming and going, and they don't know, when they might see them again. So it made me very curious about what it was like to be an Indian person living in a town like this, working at a truck stop, and what their perspective is. So that's what launched me into creating this project.
How far along are you?
So we finished it last year, and so now we're submitting it at festivals.
I'm looking at your IMDb and I'm like, I'm stalking it and I'm like, where is this? I can't find it.
Yeah, actually, sorry, I'm so bad at. Thankfully, I'm on this podcast. Thanks so much for having us, but I'm very bad at updating my online stuff. So thanks for the reminder. We make sure that goes through.
Don't worry about it. Happy to do it for you. I'll just type. Just send me the flyer or the poster.
Perfect. Thanks.
How long did it end up turning out to be?
The short is about, I think it's 16 or maybe 17 minutes, and it took us like 2 years to make, essentially, because for a year I knew I wanted to make this film, and because I was in grad school, I figured I would use my thesis, the fact that I wanted to make a thesis film, as an opportunity to execute this short and, have support from my school and all of that. But I also knew that if I don't make it through school, I'm still going to make it anyway. And so I was lucky enough to be able to get to make it through school and make it with my support of my classmates and my school and all that. But yeah, so for a while when I didn't know if I would be making it, through school, I just was hooked on this world and wanted to make it. I was basically going up to this truck stop like once or twice a month and just hanging out, trying to figure how I could, trying to talk to people, figure out how I can like style the story, what elements I want to include, and it's really informed my approach as a filmmaker now. Like, I was kind of modeling the approach on other hybrid dramas, which are essentially hybrid fiction and nonfiction films that weave a fictional narrative from elements of nonfiction and existing people in the world. And that was kind of the approach that I ended up wanting to take, where I ended up casting actors, although they were first-time actors, non-professional actors. And I had originally wanted to cast the people working at the truck stop to just play themselves, because so much of it is pulled from what was actually there. And, like it felt better than making a documentary and just coming in and putting a camera there without necessarily people knowing what's happening. And I wanted to involve them in the process of making it as a collaborator. So we did end up casting, but all of the stuff that almost everything that was in the script, story-wise, character-wise, was pulled directly from all the people that I had met and the stories that they told me.
You have a trailer?
I'm not sure if I have a trailer, but I can certainly send you the short and you can check it out. I'm happy to
spoil me rotten. I can't wait. I get first dibs.
Yeah.
Embark on your unique financial journey with Mid-Hudson Valley Federal Credit Union. Your aspirations, your milestones. We're committed to guiding you every step of the way. Whether you're saving for a dream home, planning for retirement, or seeking to consolidate debt, trust MHV to provide personalized solutions tailored to your needs. Our comprehensive range of products and services, coupled with expert financial advice, empowers you to make informed decisions and achieve your goals. Visit us online at mhvfcu.com to discover the tools and resources available to help you navigate your financial landscape with confidence and clarity. Your journey starts here.
I'll send it over.
No, I'd love to watch it. Geez, like where do I go from here? Because like honest to God, like like sometimes I try to avoid talking to other filmmakers because once I start getting this like this whirlpool going, I already feel like I'm contributing to something that I haven't even seen yet. And meanwhile, as you're talking, I'm getting flashes in my brain on things I want to create. It's like do you guys ever experience that?
Oh yeah.
Because I'm not like
Isn't yeah.
my brain wanders immediately because like I think that is such a good idea, and it's like here's what I would do. I mean, then I'm missing one or two words that you say, and I'm trying to get myself to stop. Do you guys ever get that?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, on both counts. The joy and the curse of being a creative and being in community with other artists is just like constantly being inspired by what each other makes, and then being like, oh, that gives me this idea. Oh, that gives me this idea. Wait, I'm sorry, I'm back. I'm here. Pay attention. Yeah.
I feel so embarrassed even to bring that up because I never actually said it out loud because it happens to me every single time I'm with anybody, like to do with the club, to do with the festival. It doesn't matter. Like anytime it happens, I can't even listen to music anymore because it's gotten that bad. Like
no worries, you're in a safe space.
I could drop. Thank you.
Yeah.
I could drop this black curtain right here. You would see an entire wall full of ideas. And I keep avoiding it because I'm like, no, wait, finish this one idea first, but I can't stop. Instead, I just like tune out and a month goes by and then 2 months goes by. It's like, okay, I should have done my first episode of the podcast 2 months ago. And now here we are. Well, I just had to get that off my chest. I'm sorry.
No, I think that's really great. Honestly, like even the Rushing of the Sea, when I watch it, I'm like, oh, I want to make this now. I want to do this. Like it's fun to like the poeticness of it. I think that's something that I'm interested in getting more back into, and like your original idea, Danny, of how it was kind of much more abstract, much more in film terms would have probably been something that came out as avant-garde, but it's like I'm interested in kind of getting back into that space, and like it's narrative film is what I know well, and I kind of have a handle on it, but I think that poetic cinema, and especially avant-garde, is something that can be so like personal and done in a way that like you don't necessarily need to have the same set of rules and procedure that you follow with the narrative film. So it's really exciting.
And the thing that that excites me about sort of experimental avant-garde sort of film is you don't have to have the same experiences. Well, this is true of any film. We bring ourselves to it and the audience completes the film. But especially so with experimental stuff and avant-garde stuff. It is just such a bit of a Rorschach test, or that kind of open world that invites you in to meaning make collaboratively. And it draws me in every time. I'm just always so captured by it. Even though it's not always what I make, it's always kind of there.
Yeah, it is captivating. The like uncertainty of what you're seeing and like the uncertainty of the meaning, I think, allows an audience to engage on a different level where they're just like participating in the meaning making of it. Phil, what are some of the ideas that you've got on there? What are the projects that you're working on?
Like I was stuck on I was stuck on trying to look up a word like avant-garde because I heard about it so many times. I'm like, oh, that's a big boy word. Let me look that up real quick.
Nice. We'll hear things so many times, and we'll piece it together through context, and we're like, wait, let me actually look up what this means.
Word just makes me want to do like a sword fight from Princess, like the
avant-garde.
Yes.
Basically, it just means experimental, something that's not the same, like, narrative structure that you usually see.
All right, I guess, let me see. I could get, it's not vulnerable. Let me just see. Choose virtual background, blur my background. Okay. So behind me, there is nothing. And then behind me is something. So let me see if I could turn this off.
This is like a vision board. I see like little printouts of.
Call it a vision board. Choose my virtual background.
Notes wall.
None. Click.
I see like all the films behind me. I'm just like, oh, and here's a Laurie Anderson record. Speaking of experimental.
If I could bring up my laptop, Right here is three gray boxes, and next to that,
Uh-huh.
about two giant black old wardrobes that full of them are full of VHS.
Wow,
And
nice.
like, yeah, and then some, like, I lost so many DVDs after the pandemic, but we don't have to get into that, but I get it. This right here is just only like 5 or 6 things that's in my imagination. But on
Wow.
that paper right there is 10 things on the one piece on that one thing in my imagination. Oh,
Yeah.
actually,
That's
like,
so cool.
yeah, you probably can't see it that well, but I guess all right, since I got like a minute. So here you have AFC Tunes, and that's basically a podcast platform that actually showcases all the scripts written, directed, collaborated by anybody with the AFC or outside the AFC, where people can listen rather than on iTunes. They would go on AFC Tunes, and it's all made from scratch, from one giant collaborative effort from anywhere and everybody. That's one idea. The other one is Fireland, which is currently on Amazon Music because it actually is something that would have gone on to AFC Tunes if AFC Tunes actually existed right now. So we have a podcast play, very similar to a screenplay, but in podcast form.
Yeah.
And of course, that's just me working out because I felt like looking at myself doing that. We got a script about Molly pills. That is a very good story, a psychological thriller. We raised $1,000 for that so far. We need 9 more. That was 2 years. But on this one, I got Burning Order of Man. I got AFC Writers Room. You got Molly, the AFC, Upon 12th Rock, which is a faith-based film. You got Molly, The Lion of Ireland. That is basically a knockoff of Game of Thrones, but it's based on a true book called The Lion of Ireland, which came out in the 70s, way before George R.R. Martin. But what a great story. It even really shined a light on the children of the forest, but nobody ever knows about this book. You got Part 2. You got Heart and Soul about the Korean War. You got Not OnlyFans. What is the real story about women on OnlyFans? What are they actually doing with their lives? Because we kind of judge them and we're kind of treating them bad. So if they're not OnlyFans, then what's the other side of the story? Why do they do what they do? They just go on podcasts and guys are like, oh, we disagree with you. But yeah, you're not hearing anything from their perspective.
Oh, you mean those fake people make like those fake podcast clips for engagement on TikTok and stuff, where it's just with people dumping on a woman who's on OnlyFans or something, and it drives engagement for both of them. I think that's the game. It's a false podcast.
That's the case, because like, how big of a piece of shit are you actually going to allow yourself to become because you disagree with somebody? So
we don't know if they actually disagree with them. They might just be doing it for traffic.
Rage baiting.
Then let's talk about the nitty gritty of the women who actually do this stuff, because I actually met some of them who I didn't know. We just met. But they're single mothers sometimes. Like, what are they going to do?
Oh, yeah.
So
I mean, sex work is legitimate work, and it should be protected more.
And I'm not a sex worker, but from experience, sex truly is real work. Just saying. All right. And there's also Feel the Pump. That is just a complete bullshit comedy about people who actually do something at the gym, but it's not about health and fitness necessarily. It's literally sort of like a farce of not OnlyFans on why people work out exclusively to improve their sex life. That is the only reason why they do it.
Do you know what's really funny? How you were just talking a bit ago about how our brains jump off and make weird connections even as we're in conversation. As soon as you said people are going in a gym and working out, but it's not about working out, my brain was like, horror film, what is actually happening? And I went to a completely different genre.
Bro, that's why you got to collaborate. I really want to actually share, Molly, I would love to actually hear your opinion on this, because this one is called Sikh, SIKH, and it's a picture of a cop with a red background, basically going into sharpshooter shotgun mode.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that is on the horizon. And that is actually a potential short film based on a true story that happened. I don't know if it happened in either 12 years ago or in 2008. I forget why I remembered it the way I do, but I think it happened in Wisconsin. And it was actually a shooting about an Army veteran that went completely snapped. And
in Wisconsin or something, right?
It was, sorry?
In Wisconsin or Wyoming, I think.
It was one or the other. and
Yeah.
this goes back a minute. So I started writing down how to actually execute, just like the bullet points, no pun intended, the bullet points of where's the story here, because it was a miracle in a sense, because that story could have ended much worse. And it's a tragedy in every escape of the word. And I get emotional talking about this because there's a lot of people out there suffering, dude, and it's really complicated to be a human being sometimes. But thank God for cinema, because we could actually try to like understand people's perspectives, and that actually brings us closer together. I'm a true believer in that. But that story is basically a little bit more focused on the cop that took 15 bullets to save 15 lives from the men and women that were still in that temple.
Mm.
And that guy, how do you survive 15 bullets? You probably don't. But this cop, he did survive that, and he saved 15 people in the process.
Wow.
And that was the part that really just captured me, where it's just like, like God had his hands on this outcome, because maybe he wasn't there in time, but this guy was sent there because God couldn't intervene. And this is the guy that took 15 bullets for 15 survivors. That right there is the story. And that's something I want to capture in this.
It's really inherently dramatic, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I mean, like, all of us, I'm sure, know what it's like to lose their temper, or even say things you don't actually truly mean. But to put those words into legitimate actions to take human life, that I can't even, like, from all the characters I've ever played and research I've ever done, what actually brings you to that point, because it happens sometimes like later in your life. You don't do that when you're 4 necessarily. Maybe Hitler is the exception. Like, there's always, like, not to make you laugh, but seriously, like, there's always a process in everybody's personal story on how they became who they are, and it starts with backstory. And to actually get to this point, which is all we see, sometimes it's circumstantial, it's a situation, it's a scene, and then fuck you. Hold on a second. We don't know exactly what happened to this character. And I believe all of us, how I look at life, guys, is that we're a very specific character in the never-ending story. We're able to actually read and actually see other. I know you're getting triggered. I know, like,
No, I love that story.
that,
Continue.
But my point being is that, is it impossible to even think that somewhere, someplace, someone is actually reading and watching our story the way we're able to see and watch and read other stories? Is it that far removed that it's impossible, that can never actually happen? Personally, I think it does happen. And it's like that. What was that one movie? I think it was Truth is Stranger Than Fiction with Will Ferrell.
Stranger Than Fiction, yeah.
So, like, this woman, literally, just to that concept, was literally accidentally writing these great novels that was getting people legit killed in the end. And then Will Ferrell's actually that character where it's like our lives are so chaotic sometimes, where it's just like nothing goes according to our plan. Meanwhile, somebody is actually writing your story and you're living it out, and it's affecting everybody simultaneously. And that's just kind of weird. And I don't know, that's kind of how and why I actually get involved with cinema, because I don't think anything is unbelievable or impossible. I think through cinema, we're actually able to bridge those gaps.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what's going on in my wall, and that's why I don't do much of the talking.
No, thank you for sharing. I'm so glad you put the ideas somewhere so that they don't just die inside you. They have an external life, and you can come back to them when it's time.
Yeah, exactly. Honestly, even that they're visually, like, mine is just a notes app, and sometimes I'll remember to visit it and look at them and be like, oh yeah, those are good ideas. But to have it up there on your wall, and you can be like, okay, I know what this is, and I'm gonna work on it now.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually whatchamacallit. I guess to that point, I don't just have it like written, like, or it's here on my wall. It's actually inside the chamber on the Story of Filmmakers Club website, like in that private section. I guess I could give you a little bit more of a background on like what it is I'm trying to like build, from.
Oh yeah, tell us about AFC and stuff, because maybe this is someone's first time tuning into the podcast and they don't really know about a Story of Filmmakers Club. So go.
Thank you for leading me into that. All right, so let me reset. I got to calm down. Snow? Hi, honey. All right. So, uh, let me tell you why I started it to begin with, and that'll just tie it all together so there's no loose ends. I'm sure like you guys probably know or heard of there's a passion behind everybody who starts in this business, and it took me a while to say business because it was never business for me. It was always so personal and enjoyable, and just I didn't have that lex in my lexicon or whatever the word is. Um, it's definitely where I always found a lot of joy. Being an audience member as a kid, and then actually applying myself to on stage, and then maybe writing something down, taking a puppetry class. So I cannot begin to describe how hard it was for me after college and couch surfing for almost 2 full years just to try to get that break, you know? To fast forward after my so-called big break, nothing was happening. And it's just like I had a God moment where it's like, I don't know why I'm alive. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with my life. What am I doing wrong? And I ask myself, what am I doing wrong? Because those were the exact same words Sam Ulano gave to me when I first met him. And that's a completely different story. And that'll probably tie into another podcast. But Sam Ulano was a very influential man throughout his entire 90 years of existence as a big band drummer and the amount of people he worked with in the industry. Awesome dude. Fun fact, his son works for Quentin Tarantino. And Sam gave me those words of what am I doing wrong? And I always kept that with me because I couldn't figure out what can I do differently? What could I be better at? Like I went to college, I applied myself. I went to every single agency in the New York City metropolitan area, gave them my headshot, a good one, gave them my resume. This is current. I'm young, I'm ready, green maybe, but I'm like you're not going to get a better working than me. I guarantee you that. I promise you that. But I never got accepted, or the timing was never right. Looking back on it now, it just wasn't the right time. I just had to sort of endure, and that sucks. That really sucks because you want to be creative, you definitely want to be on set. So to me, it came to the point where I took matters in my own hands, and in 2019, I just started asking, does anybody want to hang out? And that's how it all started. And that's why the AFC began. Literally, because I'm sure everybody else, they get stagnant, they get stuck, they get tired, and they get depressed. And then they could probably make the worst choice humanly possible where they were just not they just couldn't take it anymore. So what I did was is just ask people like if we were to do something together, what is it going to look like? So you fast forward just 5 years later to just literally what it looks like today. We're going on season 3 of a film festival where we could showcase everybody's work and then reset in the off season to actually collaborate on the next project because now we see everybody's skill set. We know what everybody's capable of doing. And also, it's also like a beacon and a lighthouse where it could actually attract other filmmakers to sustain this thing. Because I know I'm not going to be around forever, but this club could definitely outlive me, and that's why I'm trying to build it the way I do. So even though we're not in a tangible physical clubhouse yet, I know one day we will. We have the digital space where we could actually coordinate. You see, everybody puts an idea up on the digital wall, and we see who's in charge, who we got to talk with, and then you just start collaborating, whether it be over Zoom, on Wednesdays, on Sundays, and that's basically it. You come together, you come up with the idea, you see who's capable of executing said idea, and when the idea is more or less completed, Triborough Film Festival, okay, repeat, do it again. So it's like a springboard for anywhere you want to go in the industry, and you could actually get experience in all different categories on set. So that was the point. And that's where
That's really cool. That's so cool that you built that community. So which I'm sure that, you've obviously benefited, but moreover, the people who have joined clearly have benefited because they've stuck around and, worked on people's projects. And I think that's something as an artist, I'm sure you agree, Danny, like having that community is one of the most critical ways to make it sustainable. Like you can't really go it alone and
No.
be pushing alone at all.
No, I suppose some people can and have, but I certainly can't. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that you feel that you articulated the struggle that so many performers feel, so many actors feel. I feel like there's a huge tendency to get frustrated by the lack of control that is just part of that world. It's part of when we are telling other people's stories, opening ourselves up as vessels to tell other people's stories, and the business the way it is. Like, if we are not the decision makers in charge of hiring us, of casting a thing, or doing a thing, then it can be easy to feel disempowered, especially if the answer is usually no, which numbers wise it usually is. Or if the answer is always no, as sometimes happens, as you said, to bring us to a really low point. And it's great when we find something related that gives us a sense of mission, which is what I heard you talking about. And it seems like your mission has ended up being, at least for now, creating a space, holding this space for, you're like, oh, you also kind of feel alone in this? Come here, we'll be together and we're not alone. And then we can make things. Yeah.
It's almost like a nice version of Fagin from Oliver Twist. I'm like, oh.
Gathering.
Yeah. Yes.
I always consider myself Dodger. That guy was the coolest.
I mean, yeah. Well, especially when he was Billy Joel, right?
Sure. He was Billy Joel, the kid who played Dodger.
Hey, how do you
No, in Oliver and Company.
Oh,
he voiced the dog.
I was going by Oliver Twist. It was like, oh, okay, the musical from the United Kingdom,
which is based on, yeah.
No, I get it, and don't even get me started.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I desperately want to play Dodger if Disney goes live action. I will literally stop vaping just to sing that soundtrack and bring back Bette Midler. Still got it, baby. She's got to be that Daphne dog.
Ooh.
That would be so nostalgic. Oh, Molly,
nice.
I know you wanted to ask something.
Oh, no, I mean, my mind was going off as well. And I was just wondering, like, Dani, how do you juggle all the different projects that you're working on? And like, I know you have a few things going on, including, I think, your own podcast as well, right?
Well, there was an idea for a podcast. I don't have an interview podcast or anything like that. I had an idea for a microfiction podcast that has been, it's kind of back in the cobwebby space, again, development space. I think the short answer to how do I juggle everything I'm doing is frequently poorly, but I make it work. And it's also, when it's a situation like in like so many of us, where like you have to hold like 3-4 kind of day jobs to do the creative work. Yes, even if those day jobs are creative jobs,
right?
This is still, and then make the film, you write the things, you do the things. A big key for me has been trying to really take honest stock of my schedule and be like, oh no, I need to reserve time for rest, in which I don't even guilt myself about not being productive. I do what I want to do because otherwise I can't keep showing up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's so easy to run right over.
Exactly. Because some of the hats that you wear, you've done some voice acting and narration work as well, right? And you just mentioned you're working on a novel.
Yeah, so that's a baby idea. That's a brand new thing. So let's check back in 3 or 4 years. You have a novel on the wall, novel idea. Yeah, Phil.
No, that's a written that I never published.
Hey.
You can self-publish if you want.
Now, yeah, this year you can. I wrote that book very nicely, actually, in 2012 before shit the fucking fan for me. And it was literally the only reason I wrote that book is because I was becoming sober for the first time in my life, more or less, quote unquote. And within a year of like, yeah, got it. That was a bitch. Not easy, not hard, but tough, you know, especially after 4 years of acting school and you got to just
Yeah.
childhood in a week. That's rough. So that book was basically it's called
Yeah.
There Goes the Neighborhood. It's basically contextually a story on my last year of acting school at the neighborhood playhouse and just everything that I learned uh during the time of like you know, being a kid, incorporating experiences into all these other characters, what I learned about theater, art, music, television, everything. I even like going to the playhouse, I composed my very first song from the piano. Never like took piano lessons as a kid or anything growing up, but it came through me. And I was like rediscovering myself because I was a construction worker, I was a football player, I was a piss poor student, but all of a sudden I'm in this environment and I'm like I'm a top contender and I'm actually good at this. And it was a total different like it actually showed me who I actually could be and actually who I might have been the whole time contextually, because we kind of put ourselves in boxes sometimes up on where we could actually kind of fit in. And I just never knew where I actually could fit in until I actually started, you know, just trying new things. And this is something I just flourished in. So that book was an
Yeah.
to everything and in between. And what a tragic, beautiful story, but awesome at the same time. I don't think anybody dies that I can remember, but nah, no spoilers. I just never published the book.
Okay. Well, you can. It's still there for you.
Yeah.
The book is still there. You can publish
I
it
am
in the future if you like.
I'm actually really fucking scared because I never wanted to be the president of anything. I wanted to just be an ensemble character actor and all this stuff. That story right there is going to tell everyone who this guy actually is. And I'm more hesitant to actually release it now because I never wanted to actually talk. I'm really not a talking person sometimes. And that was just something that I just needed, like therapeutic wise. It was a fluke.
Yeah.
I was the worst student in my school. The worst.
Yeah.
I could not get an A to save my life until I went to college and I got involved with theater. Then all of a sudden I'm a 4.0 GPA student at community college for one semester. And it was a shocker because that's not me. That wasn't my identity. That wasn't what I knew to be capable of. And then all of a sudden, all that stuff just comes right out. And it's like, well, there goes the
Well, right. And I collapsed from exhaustion. But okay, so I'd love to offer you another perspective, which comes from most recently to me from Joseph Fink and Jeffrey Craner, who are two of the guys behind Welcome to Night Vale and have their own podcast on how to make stuff and get through the creative process, called Start With This, if you're interested. One of the early episodes was called Art is Disposable. And so it reminds us that you don't actually ever have to publish the book. It's enough that you wrote it. It is still part of your history, is fueling what you're doing now. Nobody else ever has to read it. And that's also okay. It was still art.
Yeah, I think that kind of personal art is just like another way of being sustainable. Like when you put an audience in front of everything, then it kind of, I mean, it really ups the stakes and can, in my experience, can really stall me in getting something finished. But when I treat something as like, okay, this is personal art, there's no audience for this, I just need to like get out some creative energy right now, then you make some really cool stuff.
Yeah, and it's such a non-capitalist way of thinking about it, which is how we're forced into thinking about product very early. Whereas if we can come back to the process, then there are a lot of interesting things that can happen.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think I've been thinking about just like what are ways that I sustain myself as an artist and the process, like finding things to love about the process. And honestly, that's kind of where I'm at right now, is I'm very much maybe too into the process where like the output is not on the forefront right now, but I'm just
right there with you. Yeah. I think sometimes we have these periods. And it feels like a fallow period, but you're planting. You're working with the seeds. And
that's definitely true. There is a harvest, there is a time to harvest, there is a time to sow. And like it is seasonal.
Yeah.
every aspects of, I guess, being an artist, more or less. And then it, it, I can never actually call myself one because I just I don't think I earned that title, but I agree that
Mm.
I can be artistic at certain things. So I got a lot of identity issues, bro. You have no idea.
Don't we all?
Oh yeah.
You're in good company.
Well, I mean, that's what actually attracts me uh to be a contributor and find that calibration baseline on what's the common denominator on where we all begin and how we could orchestrate and actually create something totally original. Because it's like, what's a recent project like? You know how like you just get triggered and get inspired, like that would be a good idea, but you never even thought of that until you met somebody that maybe just, oh, there was that spark. So like
Hmm.
that's part of the seasonal process that I think all of us actually do go through.
Yeah.
You reflect and you go through time, and you just kind of grow from. And maybe that's why a lot of us get discouraged because maybe it doesn't
Yeah.
happen soon enough or quick enough or in our timeline that we want. And that's almost like a humbling drill sometimes because you gotta like sometimes for me it's just like, what is the point of this? Who are you doing this for? Is it beneficial to anybody else but you? And when you kind of let go of maybe the egotistical part of it and then just focus on the benefit of others, then all of a sudden, click, something gives in a manner of speaking. Or I could be totally full of shit. I don't even know.
Welcome to Happy Corner. This project strives to make safe housing areas for stray cats at an affordable price. It's so easy to put together that even your children could have fun making one. Help keep cats and other animals safe with their own little Happy Corner homes. You can help this project become a reality by donating to the GoFundMe page. Happy Corner homes are a great way to show those animals in need it's okay to be happy.
Well, we don't know until we ask that question, and then we kind of test it a little bit and see how it holds up. So yeah, I think that's a perfectly great and valid question to ask of your art and just the things we do generally.
Hmm.
Hmm. I'm glad you brought that up because I actually do just sometimes cut grass and not cut grass just to kind of
Hmm.
make it look nice. Where it's just like, yeah, that's me. I like that. Forrest Gump style.
Yeah,
Oh, and this is actually turning out to be a nice conversation. What are we about 60 minutes in?
yeah, I think so.
I
Yeah.
didn't hit, I didn't even hit the timer. Just kind of been cruising.
We're just vibing.
Yeah, no, we're just vibing, and we actually hit a nice little whirl right there. We're like, maybe we triggered somebody who will mention something in the comments. If anybody out there feels validated in any way, shape, or form, please leave a comment and share it with your friends. There are a couple questions that I definitely wanted to ask. So truck stop is now on the horizon for Molly, but Danny, I kind of been seeing that you do like voiceover work, I guess for audiobooks or something like that. Do you have anything like in development that you want to share?
Oh yeah. So in terms of things I am a part of as a performer, I have a little page on my website, which is dannymartineck.com, where I try to keep it up to date with audiobooks. A recent one that's just come out that I'm very excited about was Horror Movie, which is the new novel by Paul Tremblay. If you're a horror person, it's very good.
My cup of tea.
That's fine.
That's my
And
arsenal.
then, yeah,
Yeah.
the yeah, so and then I'm also in a podcast from the folks at Gideon Media who are kind of genre luminaries called Give Me Away, written by Mac Rogers. That's currently airing season 2, which is very exciting if you
Very
like
cool.
sci-fi. Yeah.
We'll plug them in and be like, hey, shout out guys. We'll post your stuff on AFC Instagram. Tell everybody all about you.
Yeah, just do it.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, me too.
they're great. And in terms of stuff I'm doing, a short play of mine was recently published in a collection of plays by non-binary playwrights, which is called, I think, Beyond the Binary. It's apparently flying off the shelves at Drama Bookshop, which is exciting.
Tell
But
me
you
more.
can,
All right, wait a second. Okay, so you are also a what do you call that? A playwright.
yeah, I identify as, I think, as a writer generally because I dip into so many different mediums. But yes, I have had and may again in the future had a life as a playwright, mainly of short plays, a couple one acts. But this short play is called Lighthouse, and it's about a selkie, which is a mythical Scottish shape-changing seal who is escaping an abusive relationship and coming back to their previous partners and they're all three trying to figure out if there's still room and how they fit together now. So that is part of a collection of absolutely beautiful plays. I read the whole collection once it was a physical thing in my hand and was kind of exclaiming to playwrights individually about how much I love their stuff. Yeah, so that was a wonderful collection to be part of. And I hope, as you said, people continue to feel seen through that, and maybe it sparks something. And what else? I'm in development on a new short film with Danielle Benedict as director. And I met Danielle doing Fair Thesis Film at NYU. And Faye is now a co-owner and partner at the Daisy Phase production company. So Faye is also a very exciting producer with lots of exciting projects on the horizon. And we're working together on this script, hopefully to shoot next year, but we'll see. And then I'm working on a couple feature ideas, and this novel just popped up. And in the middle of all of that, I'm working 2 day jobs and taking myself on long walks.
Love the long walks. I also love going on very long walks, and so nice. Actually, when you were talking about like allowing yourself to rest or just allowing yourself to not be productive, I've been building those into my day. And when I say long, I mean like a couple hours.
Yes, like 2-hour walks. Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly. And obviously when I first started, it was like, well, I guess I could work on this thing or I could go for a walk. And now that I've just been doing it more, I'm like, I can still do that thing later. I can go for a walk now. But Danny, can I ask you a little bit more about the play? It sounds like it sounds a little magical realist, is it? Or is it more in, like space?
It's a bit more magic realism. I think I have a soft spot for a light touch of magic realism.
Yeah, I love magical.
Yeah.
And was that just like your first choice for the story, or was it like often it's used kind of as an allegory, or like, people use magical realism because the thing that's magical is kind of uncertain or like has like a, like a shape-shifting quality, like or like the connection that I would make between like a selkie and a play in a collection of non-binary in the collection of plays by non-binary authors is kind of like the shape-shifting quality of that. Was that something that you had thought of when you first wrote it, or was it just you wanted to use a selkie as a character?
It definitely, a lot of it stems from my connection to myth and my Scottish roots in general, and a little bit playing with gender in terms of the shapeshifterness. It was a little bit of gender weirdness. But it was also written for a prompt. There was a theater company I was working very closely with at the time called the Skeleton Rep, whose whole thing is modern myth. And they sent out a prompt for this one salon that was homecoming. And so I forget exactly how the idea sort of coalesced, but as soon as I realized Selkie, I was like, oh yes, the coat is very important. So Selkies, when they turn into humans, they take off their sealskin coats and they have to keep it very safe and kind of be very careful who they trust with it, because if you steal the coat, you control them.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So that to me was an opportunity to explore the certain dynamics of abusive relationships that had been that kind of. Yeah.
And is it also like in the mythology of it, is it also that like if you destroy the coat, you can't go back to being a seal?
Ooh, what a good question that I'm not sure I remember well enough to say. I'm not sure if destroying the coat would kill the Selkie or just trap them in human form. But if you take the coat and hide it, they are trapped in human form.
Mm. Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Until further notice.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
like allegory for entrapment and control and all of that.
Uh-huh.
That went right over my head, not gonna lie, until you said it.
Yeah, no worries. It's a niche myth thing.
I was just trying to
Yeah.
imagine holding a baby seal the whole time, and I'm like, this is cool.
Aw. Yeah.
Yeah. I love animals. In case you guys didn't know that by now, I do.
Really?
Well, like, what's the ultimate goal for Phil Capadora? Like, I would love to actually restore the entire park of the Catskill Game Farm.
What's there? I've never been there.
Very few people have. That was on one of my home videos where I remembered. I remember the whole day going there. I've passed the Catskill Game Farm upstate within the last several years. Um, it used to be very similar to a sanctuary, not so much a zoo. Um, it had the structure more or less of a zoo, but it wasn't. It had species from like of the same genre of buffalo or bison or horses and zebras, all of these different types of like amazing exotic specific animals where there's a big difference between the white rhino or um another rhino, where they're just totally
Mhm.
different species, like the way dogs are. So
Right.
at the game farm and the Catskills, they had this sanctuary like that matches the size of Noah's Ark of birds, like you name it. These guys didn't have, I don't think, like real like big scary cats or anything like that, but they had sort of more or less just like I guess the big game. Or I think that's why I have no idea anything about it. A documentary hasn't been done. The only thing I saw about it was people walking through the abandoned game farm, and I'm like, I didn't even know it was abandoned until like around the pandemic. Then I saw the documentary, and then I rewatched some home videos. I'm like, back in the 90s, this was like one of the biggest attractions for people in New York City to go upstate and actually,
Mm.
like just get away from the city. They go upstate, stay the weekend. They actually take their kids, 90s style. You got 4 or 5 kids. Boom. You're spending a full day for $100 at most. Everything was so cheap back then for 5 kids. Going to this oasis of a space, you know? And I just
Is it
thought, how
abandoned
cool would
now?
it be? Oh, sorry, what?
Is it abandoned now?
Yeah, you want to do a horror movie? There you go. That's
So
unfortunately like
are the animals are what happened to all the animals then were there?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Like uh from 30 years ago, it's possible that some of them passed away by now. Like 30 years for some of these
Yeah,
animals, like
that's true.
like even a water buffalo, like I remember even the llamas. I would imagine if any of them, the tortoises are probably definitely still alive, and some of the birds most likely are definitely still alive, that they don't die. Um, they probably just eventually just couldn't like replace this idea what to do with the space. And attractions and theme parks have been sort of like a top theme in like development in the state of New York. And that, honestly, it probably would have been better if they actually did put a lot of energy into restoring what's already in place and creating new attractions, because we're the next generation. We would want to relive that thing. I would. So in my head, that's something I would want to see or have rebuilt. Um, but after we replace Hollywood and create Hollywood East and maybe take over the Oscars and legitimize the Astors and turn the EGOT into the GOAT, because Astor would actually be on that list. But yeah, then we could rebuild the farm. Sure, no problem.
You got a long to-do list.
Well, I mean, I want to live a long life. There's a lot of things I want to do. There's a lot of ideas that I know are possible. Um, I never had a plan on what to do with my life. I never knew. I was a construction worker. That was my life. And then all of a sudden,
Mhm.
it's like, believe it or not, you could create your own life. And it's not easy to sustain yourself when you're kind of in the off season, more or less. But I don't know. Like, you got to have a vision. You know, like you'll die sooner if you don't have a vision for the things you do want to achieve. And discovering that vision, sometimes in any hero's journey, you need that mentor, that one magical, like those magical people that just kind of cross your path along the way. And simultaneously, they're getting carried and so on and so forth. And that's why I think life is the never-ending story. Our story's being written as we go about it. We're being read in a book somewhere, and maybe not even know it, or you crossed somebody's path in their journey, and maybe you were the one that at that appointed time that gave that guy, that girl, that word of encouragement, And I think like
Hmm.
we all do have a part to play.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that so much. And oh, Molly, what
No,
were you
just
going to say?
I'm glad you brought it back to that, because I was thinking about that while you were talking, like the never ending story thing. And I do think that, maybe someone out there is reading it, but I also think that we are the authors. I think that we're the ones that can figure out what happens next. And that's really cool that you've got your plan for what that is.
Hmm.
I believe that
Hmm.
too. Like, are you the author, or are you the reader, or are you the character? Actually, you're the Trinity. You're all the above.
Exactly. D, all of the above.
You're all the above.
Mhm.
And even though the story might not be never ending, just because I am conscious of, oh, I have to call my family in a little bit and stuff. Even the never ending story has chapters, right? So Phil, how do you want to close this out?
Well, I guess in the way we always do. Uh, I guess we'll start off by asking if anybody ever wanted to get in touch with either one of you, what are the best ways to approach you?
Yeah, you can go to my website, DaniMartineck.com. It's just DaniMartineck.com. And my email is the same, just my name at gmail.com. It's also on the website. Just say hey.
Do you have an email button for your Instagram?
Yeah.
I do. Well, on Instagram, you could just DM me. I'll probably see it.
Yeah.
But I'm weird. I like mutuality on Instagram. So like if like I'm following someone that I've met in life, but they're not following me, eventually I'll be like, I don't know, this doesn't really seem like a friendship. I'm just the weird one who's not like looking for followers on Instagram. I'm just like, I want to actually have a conversation. So like, bye. But so maybe like follow me first and start a conversation, and I will follow you back and we'll chat.
I
Nice.
think we only get like
Yeah,
50
you can
people
find me
to
on
listen to the podcast, so you don't have to worry too much about the like one out of 50 people are just that douche. Not to roast my own
you can
podcast, but go ahead, Molly. I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you.
No, you're good. It's the Zoom lag. It's the Zoom lag. I forgot about this. I haven't used Zoom in so long.
Yeah.
You can email me at mollykarna@gmail.com or DM me. I'm sounding, it seems to be a little more open to my DMs and my Instagram follows. I'm a little more indiscriminate. So if you reach out to me on Instagram, I'm likely to see it and reach back out. And the handle is at mollykarna.
At Molly Karna. Got it. Well, if you haven't followed me, I'm going to follow you. That's for sure. And I can't wait to actually take a look at Truck
Yeah, do it. I'll follow you back.
I'm really like not to like steal Walt Disney's thunder, but I'm a huge admirer of culture and the backstory. I'm a culturalist enthusiast person. I don't know. That's a new word. We'll ask Shakespeare Jr. if it counts. So I guess there's only a couple questions I have left to close out. Other than just saying thank you guys for your time and helping me break the ice on season 4. It was really nice to actually get a chance to really get to know you guys a little bit better and just share ideas and just talk and just keep keep us busy on a very busy Sunday afternoon. And happy Father's Day to everybody out there listening. I'm sure this is going to come out a little bit after. Sorry in advance. But there is always one question I really got to know before we end, and I'm going to ask the same question to both of you. So, Molly, I want to ask you an honest question. Um, because I was once reading this book in my early days called The Right Words at the Right Time. And that is a book of a collective of interviews and letters on all of these celebrities, politicians, well-known figures who were not that well known at the time, but they definitely are today. So the author of the book asked them all this one question: has there anybody in your life that has ever given you the right words at the right time that have just always stuck with you to actually take life by the horns, that were with you for better or worse, that helped contribute to you persevering to keep going?
It's a great question.
Or do you have any words of your own that you would like to share?
Sure. Well, the one that comes to mind was something that a mentor told me as a director. And very early when I was like just out of college and I had asked for advice, this mentor is also a director. Um, and he told me, a shout out to Avi Varghese, by the way, that's who it is. But he told me, I was just asking for advice on how I can become a director. And at the time I was applying for internships and looking at production companies and looking at like associate producer roles and things like that. And he told me that if you want to become a director, then you should direct. And to me, what that's meant is like, no matter like whether you're directing a big project or a small project or an exercise, like just continue to grow your skill and your craft in the thing that you want to do, rather than, I mean, there are many ways to get from point A to point B, but I think I had always kind of sold myself short that I needed to take some sort of circuitous route because I actually didn't study film in college, and I thought I needed to continue to go in different directions until I finally landed there. But it was good advice that was kind of just like, do the thing that you want to do, and don't necessarily wait on others to let you do it. Just do it and continue to grow your skill, and soon, others will seek you out eventually.
Wow. Here, here. How about you, Danny?
Yeah.
Have you ever received the right words at the right time?
I think I'm kind of a champion of receiving the right words at not quite the right time. And then I revisit them later and I'm like, oh, okay, yes. Okay. Well, I'm glad I saved those words. But there are so many examples of that. But I think I want to take a stab at giving that for the listeners. And Molly, it dovetails so perfectly with what you were saying. What I really want to say is just keep going. Whatever is driving you, even if you don't have a very strong sense of mission or sense of purpose, and whatever it is that you're doing, it doesn't have to be artistic, but I imagine if you're listening to this or watching this, it probably is. Keep going. It's okay if it feels like other people are better than you, or other people are getting more things that you wish you had. Just keep going because you don't know what's out there for you yet. Life is a delightful surprise. And Phil, I kind of have a similar journey as you. I started out as a scientist. My degree is in science. I managed a behavioral cognitive neuroscience lab my first few years in New York City, and kind of backed back into acting and writing and stuff. But that has been the most mission-driven aspect of my life, is like, oh no, this is how I can help us feel less alone, which is what I really needed when I was a kid. And I think so much of what we make is like making the things we want to see or that we needed to see or have. So everyone, please, even if you don't need this now, maybe save this, keep it in a little rainy day file or something, and just keep going.
Here, here. Well said, both of you. Thank you so much for that, and thank you so much for your time. Oh, I always get emotional. I hate goodbyes, but I know I want to be respectful of your time. Um, was there anything that you guys wanted to ask me before we wrap things up?
No, I just want to say thank you again. Thanks so much for having us. This was such a great conversation. We all went into it pretty open and just, without any kind of preconceptions, and it was fun to see where it went.
Yeah, thank you, Phil.
Thank you, Phil. Oh my God, you're welcome.
Haha.
Oh man, I love, like, it's rare. I never get thanked. I'm like, and go figure, it's Father's Day. But I gotta definitely thank him because I gotta post some pictures about him and I when I was a kid, and he was like he was a firefighter, but oh man. I guess it's about that time. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning into the AFC podcast. Welcome to season 4. If you are interested in ever being a guest on the AFC podcast and you have a story to tell, please don't hesitate. The sign up is on our website. If you got a filmmaking background, just like hit us up, and we'd love to hear your story, man. And I honestly, like, I'm really like, I hate getting emotional, dude. I'm so happy, like, that as well as this conversation did. And I know it's always hard to actually say goodbye, as you guys know. But that being said, I want you two to please enjoy your weekend, enjoy your week, enjoy your summer. The services of the Astoria Filmmakers Club is at your service, disposable. If there's anything you need, whether it's fundraising, any help in any way, shape, or form, please do not hesitate to ask. And that goes for anybody listening out there today. Definitely want to give Isabella a shout out. I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and we can't wait to have you on the show. And of course, with that being said, to Danny, to Molly, wherever you go, in all that you do, always remember to never forget community, creativity, and joy. You guys
Thank
have
you.
a great day. Thanks
Great.
for the show. We'll see you on the next one.
Take care.
You too.
My pleasure. Ciao for now, everybody.